Yes, he's awesome. All right, welcome in. It's Wednesday. It's time for Full Court Press. We were just talking backstage about how great Jim Root was yesterday, filling in for me. So shout out to Jim for holding down the fort. He did great. He gave out South Carolina. Rob, I already see the comments, so I got to pop in here. Yes, I ruined the parlay with Marist. I was in traffic when I texted that, so I had no analysis, but everything checked out. Like all of the sort of info I had on that game checked out. Georgia Tech, the big reason I like that. So, I mean, not that this does you any good now, but I guess I'll quickly say the reason I liked Marist at 7.5 last night, I had pretty good intel that Ndongo was going to remain out for Georgia Tech. He did. And I thought without him, it would be a good matchup for Marist defense, which is very good. And credit to Georgia Tech. They put up 87 points, 8 for 11 from three. They shot nearly 58% from the field. I just got to tip my cap there. I mean, that's just much better than I thought Georgia Tech could muster up without one of their biggest offensive threats. So sorry for rooting the parlay. But again, what Jim did great yesterday. And I'll promote, like, the whole way I made this show up. Like, before the season, I talked to the 3-Man Weave guys and I said, hey, are you guys doing a weekday show? Because they haven't done it the last couple of years. And they said, no, we've got other stuff going on. We're just going to keep our best bet show on Saturday. And I always like their chat mob portion of the show. So the way they do their show, they have an outline. They go to a chat break where they just rapid fire questions, and then they go back to the outline. And I was like, I asked them, I said, can I just steal the chat mob idea and do a full show like that? And they were like, yeah, go for it. So that's kind of where I got the idea for this. But Jim still does a show with Kai and Maddie Cox on Saturdays for an hour. So if you're looking for more Jim Root, Saturday morning, I think they do like their show at 11 a.m. right up until the noon tip-off. So check that out. And yeah, it was great to have him fill in. Rob Bino, you came through with your leg of the parlay as well, so congrats on that over. I hit my client play on Canisius. I have 4 straight winning days. Someone's like, Trig's ice cold. I've now won 4 straight days, so you're going to have to go back to last week for the ice cold Trig because we got 4 winning days in a row. And we're going to try to do it again here today. So, Rob, welcome in, and I think we should kick off with Vandy Memphis. This feels like the biggest game of the day.
Yeah, it probably, I mean, for what it's worth, there's 3 teams in college basketball out of the Power 5, or whatever you want to label them as, Power 4, Power 5, it doesn't matter. Vanderbilt, Oklahoma State, and Michigan, where through 10 or so games this season, I think I have been extremely impressed and maybe surprised by their offensive output. Oklahoma State was not this type of offensive team for the last couple of years. Michigan scoring 100 a night. You're like, who the heck is that? And maize and blue, that's Michigan now. And Vandy has just been an offensive juggernaut all season long. And I don't want to sell them short because going through their numbers this morning, they've been solid defensively too. I'll start with this. The strength of schedule is certainly in favor of Memphis as of this point. However, Vandy's played VCU, St. Mary's, and SMU in 3 of their last 4, not exactly slouches, and come through with huge wins over all 3. Really not even close. Vanderbilt now is still undefeated. Offensively did the job when you can line up and play St. Mary's and score 96 on a neutral. That's a big deal. So I find it hard to see Memphis containing Vanderbilt here today, despite the fact that Memphis has the home floor. Vandy, not necessarily a team that's been in a lot of true road games so far this season, UCF. Aside from that, all neutrals in home. So it'll be a different deal for Vandy to go on the road, play Memphis here, but I don't see their offense being stopped, Adam. That being said, the Memphis side, as I mentioned, good talent, strong schedule, have not come up big in hardly any of these games other than Baylor, where they beat Baylor. Otherwise, they're losing to every team in Vandy's weight class that they've played. Kind of hard to make the case for them here to go ahead and win this game. Vanderbilt sort of has the Memphis option covered, where Memphis, generally speaking, would like to outrun you, outscore you. Not going to be the case against Vanderbilt here. They just have shot makers. I was going through their numbers early this morning. They've shot 50% or better in like 7 games already, Vandy has. And they're holding opponents to 75 or less in 8 of those 10. That combination is really, really good. I find it hard to poke a weakness in Vanderbilt so far. We'll see if on the road against a team like Memphis that can hit the glass, that can play up tempo, et cetera, et cetera. But I just think Vandy's got enough on their resume right now to show that they can handle this. 2 things I looked at, their team total, because I really would rather focus on their offensive prowess rather than try and lay 8 points on the road. 82.5 seems like a very doable number in a game that won't be played in the half court for the most part, won't be played at a snail's pace. As I speak, Adam, we see a universal jump in this number to 9.5. Vandy has now flown from 7.5 all the way to 9.5. Total down a little bit to 158.5. I think my best recommendation here is to stick to the team total thought that I had, just because Vandy has scored on everybody. That number is 82.5. I think they should get to 83 or better.
Yeah, that move toward Memphis, I think they had that there was a couple guys, at least one, and I'm just trying to go back into my notes, that was questionable tonight for Memphis. I wonder if that move suggests that I believe it's Julius Thedford that missed the last couple games. So I wonder if he remains out for Memphis, or it's just a move toward a very good Vanderbilt team. Rob, I think I owe Penny Hardaway an apology. I have been critical of him in past years, not so much this year, but I've been critical of his coaching skills, and I owe him an apology because, yeah, he might not be the guy that's going to like X and O you to death or draw up a play or have some like crazy schematic advantage against you. But like, there's so much more to coaching these days than just that. And I think Penny Hardaway does everything else really well, in terms of like the guys he brings into the program, the fact that he's loved in that city, gets his team motivated. I see the chat talking about his record as an underdog is very good. His teams always seem to get up for the big game. I know that wasn't the case over the weekend, but I didn't watch a ton of that game, but I think Louisville didn't miss against Memphis over the weekend to just blow them out of the gym. Going back to a point that you made, that would be my main concern here for Memphis, and that's their inability to likely get a bunch of transition points in this game. Vandy's just not going to turn the ball over. That they're such a good ball handling team. They don't turn it over. And if Memphis can't get those like quick sort of, I'll call them like athlete points, right? Where they're just like able to force a turnover, get out and run and get an easy bucket that way, I think it's going to be very difficult for them to beat Vanderbilt. So that's kind of where I'm at on this one. I'm not going to say I agree with the move all the way up to 9.5. That's a pretty big number, but I have my reasons as to why I don't really want to punch back. And it really just comes down to Vandy, their efficiency on offense, and the fact that I don't think there's going to be many easy points here for Memphis.
Yeah, I would thoroughly agree. Memphis just doesn't have anything right now, and I get the schedule's been tough, but they don't have any asset, Adam, at this point that they can hang their hat on. They really haven't been terrific at anything, where Vanderbilt's been terrific at everything. Again, that comment right there is what we spoke to earlier. The only time they played away from home was against UCF, and UCF we're not going to put in Memphis's category here. But Vandy did get 105 points in that game. A lot of neutrals, a lot of homes. The trip, again, we said it the other day, it was, I think, Knoxville to Nashville to Memphis. It's a hike. It's not close. So it certainly is a road game. Memphis will be fired up. We'll see how this goes. If Memphis' strength of schedule has them prepped for this, but nobody seems to have stopped Vandy from scoring right now. I wouldn't play against them.
I haven't been to a Memphis game yet, but like my gut says that they don't have the home court edge that some of these other teams do. It's an NBA arena. I just like you'd think that Vandy will have some fans there. I don't know. My gut says that is not the biggest home court edge. I'm like a little bit less concerned. Whereas if Vandy was going to a weird gym or like a much more hostile environment, I would probably say that, okay, well, yeah, that's first true road game. But yeah, for some reason, and again, I can't speak from personal opinion like I can at a lot of these, but for some reason, I find myself not giving as much of a bump for Memphis at home. Maybe it's the NBA arena type thing.
It's certainly not Memorial Gym, right? Where the coaches have to try and shout to their teams 94 feet away. That's a much bigger home floor advantage for Vandy.
Really good point. I wish I didn't lose the comment here because I thought this was like a really good point. Someone in the chat, and I'll find it as I scroll through, says, fade some of these head fake moves. I've seen more of that in college basketball than ever. It's part of the reason personally I'm like trying to bet a little bit later in the day. I feel like there's so much market manipulation going on in like the first, overnight and then the first few hours of the day that I find myself like kind of wanting the market to settle a little bit. And then if I miss a number, I miss it. It is what it is. These games are so volatile as it is. It's like, I don't even really, like I'm having less FOMO than ever, Rob, is I guess what I'm saying. And like, so yesterday being a perfect example, I ended up on Canisius plus 22. It was everything else sort of like moved out of range, and Canisius was an easy winner the day before with Houston Christian. I've also been on a nice run of these like big underdogs. So, and if you're going to play big double-digit underdogs, more often than not, you don't want to play them early, right? Because like, especially during non-conference play, the team that's the named team is likely going to take a little money at some point. And there was quite a few yesterday that cashed. Lipscomb, Long Island, Evansville. That was one that got hit early, never came back. Canisius. So again, it's just the Jacobs comment just kind of, put that in my head. Like, yeah, I kind of agree with that. It's an interesting, interesting stuff right there.
Yeah, what is interesting about that real quick, Adam, is the first 7, 10, 14 days we did this show, we were seeing moves of, and I'll speak from totals now, 6 points, 8 points. And these games were still getting over or under, whichever way the line moves.
Yeah.
So sides and totals a little bit different with these head fake moves. These totals moves seem to be absolutely on point, but the side moves are different.
Yeah, that's a really good point, Rob. The totals, it's like if you don't get your bet down and it moves in the way that you want it to move, it's probably not coming back. Like you're probably not going to get that number. Whereas I see a lot of like what it feels like jockeying for position in the market on the side where it's like it'll move and then 4 hours later it's back where it opened, maybe even like has moved in the other direction. It's a really good point. I'll read this comment here before we move on. Trigger, you hit the nail right on the head. The early runs on lines are setups. Later, it settles. Groups manipulating things early. Yeah, I mean, it's harder to get down early. So why would they want a lot? Why would groups trying to move significant money try to lock in their position early? That doesn't make, when they can't get as much down. So I think you're seeing that more than ever. And it's probably the moral of the story is like, you want to bet the game you want to bet. So if that means you have to get it in early, then you want to get it in early. If that means you have to get it in late, you want to get it in late. I don't think you want to like chase a move because something is moving. And also, it's probably going to come back. Like for example, yesterday, if you were on the other side of me and you like Georgia Tech, I got Marist in when we did that. That's another reason I used Marist for the parlay. I disagreed with the move, knowing that they were going to be without the guy I thought they were going to be without. 7.5 ended up being a good number. It went back down to like 6, but you had multiple chances to get Georgia Tech minus 5.5 or 6 yesterday. It's good. It's just a good conversation. I know there's a trillion games today, so we'll talk about the, we'll get back into the game chat. My segue here, Rob, was one NBA arena to another, and so we'll go to Fiserv Forum here for Georgetown Marquette in a game that feels like both teams, it feels like both of these teams desperately need this game. The team that doesn't get this game might spiral a little bit, right? Like just where they're at in their seasons right now, especially Marquette. Marquette loses this one at home. I don't know. They might that's going to be tough to bounce back from. The market here, Rob, thinks Marquette's going to win this game. 3.5 up to now. It looks like 5.5 some places. How do you see this one, Georgetown, Marquette?
Yeah, at least early, they think Marquette's going to win this game. Right out into the conversation we were just having, we do see a surge on Marquette up to 5.5 here. Georgetown, not the strongest schedule in the world so far this season, but in a couple of key games early, Adam, when we were kind of, touting maybe a good year for Georgetown, they did beat Maryland. They did beat Clemson. Those are big wins. Marquette, on the other hand, they've just been an absolute, well, I don't want to call them a disaster, but they're just not good as of late. Buried by Wisconsin, buried by Purdue, lose to Oklahoma, lose to Maryland, get buried by Indiana. Any good team they've played, lose to Dayton. They just have not shown up against the better competition, which would lead me to be on the Georgetown side. However, it is conference season now, and sometimes things swing once conference season begins. I don't know that Shaka Smart was playing around with his, or experimenting, evaluating, so to speak, early on, and these game results aren't indicative of what they'll be throughout the conference season. But off of what I've seen, off of what we can base a selection today on, man, I'd rather be on Georgetown. But larger than that, I'd rather be on the total under in this game. Georgetown is a team that's really not going to get up and down. And Marquette is a team right now that doesn't shoot the ball straight. It's really hard to handicap a team to come out and do real well offensively when they just haven't shown you that so far. Marquette, for what it's worth, very, very, very uncharacteristic. 284th in the nation in effective field goal percentage. You can't trust a team that's going to play a fairly good defensive team, even if they're at home, to go up and score points. So, early on, Ken Palm, when I saw these yesterday, I saw his number before the openers came, 150. I thought, man, that thing's got to be played under. I still think I would lean that way. His side, I'm not going to get into here because I don't know. I mean, I have a feeling Marquette's just not going to be good this year, but I don't know it for a fact yet. And Georgetown has shown us a couple of big-time victories. So for me, it would be under in this case. And under doesn't come out of my mouth much, but I like it under in this one.
So Shaka Smart has owned Ed Cooley since he got to the Big East, whether it be Providence or Georgetown. Smart has fared well. I had it written down here, 6-2 in Big East matchups. So, I don't know what there is, if there's something to that. I know that Georgetown probably gets beat on the glass here. That certainly helps Marquette. But for me personally, I'm not. I'm kind of with the chat where it's like I'm not going to lay 5.5 with Marquette. I could only play back at that, and then I think that's should be probably the standard, right? Like that's to me like so. I'll just talk like I have had a bad start to the college basketball season, like from up to this point. Like I've had a couple of good days, but overall it's been a bad start for me trying to turn that around. One thing I have not done, and what you absolutely cannot do, like, listen, it's hard enough to win doing this as it is. Like, you can't put yourself in a position where you lay 5.5 and lose when you could have had 3.5. That has not happened to me this year. Like, I think I've only been stuck with a bad number maybe 3 or 4 times over like more than 100 bets, and none of those has cost me. And listen, you're not going to get the best number every single time. It's just impossible almost to always just beat the market or get the absolute best number. But if you're doing it most of the time, that's really what you want. And you can't, you just have to move on. Now, as I speak, Georgetown gets hit and it's back to 4.5. And it's like playing out on the show, like exactly what we're talking about. If you like Marquette, I see that, oh no, I'm sorry. That was the wrong line. It was a different game. But there is still 4.5. So the point is, like, not even really worth talking about Marquette at this point for me, because there's no way I would ever lay -5.5 when I could have had the opener. So I guess if you like the number, Georgetown, but there's some matchup advantages here, in my opinion, for Marquette. And the fact that Shaka has done well against Cooley is going to keep me off, especially with Marquette at home in what feels like a big home spot for them.
One thing I'll add real quick here, Adam, is any Shaka smart team thrives off of forcing turnovers. And Georgetown, for what it's worth, has the second best turnover rate in the country. They just don't turn the ball over. And if you can't turn them over and Marquette can't transition into easy points, any Shaka smart offense doesn't thrive in that situation. They chuck a lot of threes. They don't make a lot of threes. Fundamentally, they're just not a good basketball team. How they perform once the conference season starts, we'll see. And maybe, in Ed Cooley's defense, he's had Providence and Georgetown. And really, those personnel matchups haven't stacked up in his favor against what Shaka Smart has had at Marquette. So we'll see if the coaching edge continues. But I would think this game stays under the number in this one.
I'll answer Corp's question quick. Does public consensus ever affect your handicapping? For me, not really. Not at this point. The reason being, like now in football, I'll definitely take it into consideration when I'm betting a football game because the handle is so much bigger, right? So it's like when you're dealing with like NFL type handle, then yeah, like you're going to have to start taking public perception into the equation because the line is going to be probably shaded more so in that direction. I feel like March Madness, it really starts to matter a little bit because those games get football game type handles. But at this time of year, like, public perception, I don't think is going to really have much bearing in, let's say, Arkansas State, Texas State, like, something like that. What, like some of these other games, like they're just not getting the handle, in my opinion, for the public to really matter. And the books, if they get burned on like the public, like loading up on one side in, let's say, Siena, Vermont, like something that's on extra board, they're just not taking enough money on it for them to even care. So I would say more to answer your question, no, unless it's like the feature matchup where it's like a top 10 matchup and that maybe it's like Big Monday, Rob, right? Like where there's not many games and you've got this like a big time standalone game out of like the Big 12. And then that's what everyone is looking at for the night. Other than that, my answer to that question is no. I don't know if you want to throw something on that too.
I'll just say real quick, as an everyday bettor for, I've been in this industry since 1992. So 33 years worth of kind of what you would call professional betting. And one thing I had to learn, Adam, was when, and every bettor who's in this 365 days a year, making wagers, you run into a cold streak. And one thing I had to learn is that when you run cold, I would kind of start to be affected by line moves. If I like the other side and I see the game move, I'm like, damn, I'm wrong again. But you have to learn in this business that you have to thoroughly either trust your process, what you handicap the game to be, and not, again, I learned a long time ago from a guy who told me if you play these line moves, you become a 50-50 bettor. You've talked about market manipulation earlier in the show. It really does go on. I don't pay attention too much to consensus anymore. In fact, I'll tell you what, on the odd services that we use, you can always find 80% this, and 65% that. I don't even pay attention to those things. I don't know where those ticket counts come from. I don't know where that money handle comes from, who's being used to record that data. So I really don't pay attention anymore whatsoever.
All right, Garth, Thank you for the donation. Much appreciated. He says thoughts on the Northern Kentucky Oakland game. He's leaning Northern at home. They're 4-0 against the spread at home. Garth, I'm kind of with you here. Now, when I made my numbers this morning, my number tilted toward Oakland a little bit, but I think Oakland is going to have a pretty key injury tonight that would sort of make me have to go back and figure out just how many points I attribute to this person. And if that's the case, I might be on Northern Kentucky with you. I think it was minus. I don't know if you have a number for this one right there, Rob, but I believe it was 1.5 earlier when I saw this. And I just want to, so the just trying to find my injury notes are all over the place.
Real quick,
yeah,
while you look at open 3
Yep.
and it's down to 2.5.
Okay, so I believe Northern Kentucky is a slight favorite, right? Is that what you have right there?
Yes.
See, now that makes sense. Like, if there was no injuries in this game, that move would make sense. Like, I would, if Oakland +3, I would expect that to move back toward pick, because I think in most people's power ratings, you're probably almost everyone's going to have Oakland a little bit higher. I would say most people don't attribute a ton of home court to Northern Kentucky, though Garth makes a good point that they have covered every spread at home this year. But it looks like Nassim Mashhour is going to be out for Oakland, and that was something I jotted down as being a pretty key injury for them. One of their 6'6" kind of, I think he kind of plays at the 3 a little bit. But in a game that you got two teams that are kind of similar, both play zone, both kind of like, I feel like they're almost somewhat not mirror images of each other, but it's weird. A lot of those teams in the horizon are very constructed, very similar. I don't know what there is to that. Maybe they all get together before the season. They're like, we're going to build our teams all the same way. But that to me, them having to go on the road, being down a starter, I kind of looked at that game and said, Northern Kentucky, this is probably a good spot for them to get another win. And they have been good at home. So Garth, I'm not going to bet against you. Not something that's made my card yet, but I did have Northern Kentucky jotted down as an option. Rob, do you have anything side or total for Garth?
I would agree with it. Northern Kentucky for a couple of reasons. And I would almost, in fact, I've looked at Northern Kentucky's team total here. It's interesting to me that Darren Horn, a longtime college coach, has picked this year to decide that he's going to run. And their tempo numbers are way up this year, especially on the offensive end. They go quick. There's some differences here, though. Northern Kentucky, very good at forcing turnovers. Oakland does not force turnovers. We often talk about Greg Kampe and these funky types of zones that he'll throw at teams. All that aside, they haven't stopped anybody from shooting well this year. They give up threes. They give up twos. Where Northern Kentucky's at least they force turnovers. The other side does not. You're at home. You can force some turnovers. It's going to be a fast-paced game. And the last thing I'll say here is when you were talking about these two teams playing zone, teams get off shots very, very quickly against Oakland, which plays into Northern Kentucky's hands. They want to get up and down the floor. They want to shoot quick. They want to score quick. NKU, on the other hand, they slow people down. The transition defense has to be very, very solid if you believe in the analytical numbers, which say that they force teams into the 344th slowest average length of possession. So you come down against your Oakland, you come down against Northern Kentucky, there might not be a lot of quick, easy looks. There will be on the other side. The other side forces turnovers. They shoot it well. A lot of the offensive numbers are mirror images. I don't know. You're at home only laying 2.5. To me, it seems like Darren Horn, unlike a lot of coaches that will take their personnel and jam the square peg into the round hole because they play a certain way. It seems like Darren Horn has taken this personnel and play to their strengths and gone with an up-tempo style this year. So I would like that side under a 3-pointer, only laying 2.5. I also think their team total might get up and over.
Yeah. So the player in question, Mashhour, got hurt in the game. So I actually had Oakland 2 games ago when they played Toledo, and I think he got hurt around the 6-minute mark, or that's when he maybe left the game. I don't think Oakland got to stop the rest of the game. Somehow they won 98-97. It was a crazy game, but Toledo just made every shot. They got whatever they wanted, and that's like not really characteristic toward to that Oakland team. And the next time out, last time out for them without him was probably their worst game. Well, I would say losing to Eastern Michigan is probably worse, but just 63 points against Northern Iowa last time out. So, Garth, I'm not going to disagree with you. I think you're probably looking at the right side with Northern Kentucky right there. Oh, I got a. Oh, we'll get to a couple here. So, Steve, I'm going to go to this one first. He says, well, Steve, I'll come back to your other one, but I see you agreeing. So Shane says Arizona State plus 8.5 is a lock. Is a look. Sorry. Yeah, we don't say lock on the show, Rob. Nothing's a lock. We know that.
That's right.
Is a look. I watched every possession of that UCLA Gonzaga game over the weekend, and there was UCLA playing more zone. I thought they might do that. I had UCLA plus 10 in that game. I ended up pushing. I felt like I deserved to win. I feel like if they knock down a free throw or two at the end, they're going to cover that 10. They came back to, I believe, take a lead, tied or in the lead with like maybe 10 minutes to go in that game. Point is, I feel like this sort of zone that Mick Cronin has now played pretty much since the Washington game is been good for them. It worked against Oregon. It worked against Washington. And it really like did work against Gonzaga, even though they lost the game by 10. Like they, for the most part, held their own with Gonzaga and, got enough stops to get back in the game. And that game, like, listen, Donovan Dent missed like 5 foul shots. Billadou missed a foul shot. Like the way that game played out at the end was just, a couple possessions here or there. Gonzaga hits a big shot and suddenly they're up 10. Point is, I was very impressed with UCLA. And I look at this Arizona State team and think that, like, if UCLA comes out and plays defensively like they have the last couple games, plays like they did against Gonzaga, goes to that zone and forces Arizona State to shoot a lot of outside shots and threes, that's a favorable situation for UCLA. So the number might feel big, but I actually would look the other way. I'd be looking at the Bruins right here, and I may lay it with the Bruins because I just think that if Arizona State can't solve this sort of new zone that they're playing, that might be a double-digit Bruins win. How are you seeing UCLA Arizona State tonight, Rob?
Well, I'll say this as somebody as well who saw the Gonzaga UCLA game the other day. The problem for UCLA obviously was the Gonzaga bigs. EK went crazy in that game. Huff was very good as well. They just couldn't handle him. And on the other side, maybe Billadou missed a free throw, but Billadou was keeping them in the game for quite a while, hitting threes, scoring like crazy. He was upset a couple times when he thought he was fouled, maybe. So they played well enough. To your point, they were in that game almost the entire way. And Gonzaga stretched it out in the end to get that 10-point victory. I think it was even more than 10 at one point. UCLA knocked it down a little bit. But I still don't – we've talked about him a lot. Donovan Dent, I still don't think he's being utilized the right way on this team. You have to let him – at Billadou, to me, in that game, Tyler Billadou just needed somebody to help. And we'll see if that develops with UCLA. But the point here is that I don't think they're going to have – Arizona State's got size in that starting front line, but it's not EK and Huff. Those two guys are pretty special offensively. And I don't see that from Arizona State. ASU's been a solid three-point shooting team for most of the season. I think, in my opinion, that Mick Cronin and his defense can handle that a lot better than if you're going to destroy them on the interior. So maybe Arizona State's style plays into UCLA's hands a little bit. I would say I don't trust their offense enough to lay it with them at this point in time. I really need to see a secondary scorer here that's going to come through night in, night out. Billadou is, without question, the lead guy on this team. So we'll see. I think it might be too much for me to lay. I certainly don't want to take it because I don't think Arizona State has the assets that Gonzaga had on the interior, and Gonzaga had a rough time on their home floor with UCLA. Could get high scoring here, Adam. We'll see. I mean, Mick Cronin's known for defense. Bobby Hurley's team pushes pace and shoots. We'll see. But I don't have a real good feel side or total here.
Yeah, I went back to my notes and had Maui Rims with a question mark next to Arizona State being the 22nd ranked three-point shooting team in the country, 39.2%. Of course, they had the benefit of playing 3 games out in Maui where every shot went in. So, do what you will with that. I would agree. So, first of all, great point on EK. Not only did he was making impossible shots. Yeah. Guys were hanging on him in the lane. And he was like finishing high off the glass with like two dudes hanging on him. Like he closed out that game for Gonzaga, like so impressive. And, I think the final score is deceiving right there. I felt like UCLA pretty much hung with them every step of the way. For whatever reason, Cronin wants Donovan Dent to be like a point guard, like a true point guard. And that's like, I don't think that that's his bet. Like, I think you just have to let him ball out, like kind of like New Mexico did, where it was like, you give him free reign. Just let him go do whatever he wants. Like that's how he's going to be at his best. But, last game, 10 assists, that's great. But kind of like you're saying, I don't think they're getting the full Donovan Dent experience right now, which is a problem. You made another point that I think is probably what decides this game and what also would tilt it into the favor of UCLA is that, like, right now, UCLA can't rebound at all. Like, and that's another area where Gonzaga just ended up asserting themselves and pushing that lead out to 10. UCLA can't get a board to save their lives, and neither can Arizona State. So it's like, if Arizona State can't take advantage of what's clearly UCLA's biggest weakness right now, that's a little bit of a concern to me. But the great equalizer there might be the point spread, Rob. And so who knows? 8.5, definitely a bigger number, but I don't know. I'm still a believer in this UCLA team. Probably more than most. And it looks like this is another one that opened 9.5 down to 8.5, coming back to 9 places. So we will see.
Yeah, real quick to the point, Adam. Yeah. I don't know who the analyst might have been. Don McLean that night. I forget who it was, but he actually made the point to what you were saying. He says, you know what Mick Cronin wants for Christmas right now? He wants a defensive rebound. They could not get one in that game. It was crazy.
Yeah, and you could argue that like the playing that zone makes it a little bit tougher to get rebounds. Like, it's going to be harder for them to rebound out of a zone, but that should be. I'll tell you what, that team should be a lot better than they are. But I always think Cronin is slow rolling everyone with the way he complains and the way he's like, it's like I want to know how much of this is like an act. Goes in, he's like, we just don't, So you bring up his quotes all the time. They're out of control. I mean, so part of me thinks it's like, he's putting on a show, kind of like last year, but who knows? All right, Steve, I'll go. We'll talk about this one. Huge game for Siena tonight. I can't remember the last time that they sort of had a non-conference game of this magnitude. Probably because they haven't really been good in a while, like this good. I think 9-2 is their best start through 11 games in a very long time. I don't have the, and so you got to take some of that with a grain of salt. Like there was better Siena teams that just played some power conference teams early and didn't start 9-2. But the Saints 9-2. Their 2 losses on the road to St. Bonaventure, which is like not a bad loss, and they lost their big to a concussion in that game, and they really needed him in that game. And then the game I went to earlier this year, where Cox from Colgate banged a 50-footer to win at the buzzer from half court. The only 2 losses for Siena this year. Now, you could argue that the schedule has been quite easy of late. Bunch of games that they should have won and did, either at home or down in DC as part of like an MTE. So there's those 2 things. Vermont is probably their toughest opponent. No, not probably. Vermont is their toughest opponent since the Colgate Bonaventure games were back-to-back earlier this year. I can tell you from experience that Burlington is a very tough place to go and play and get a win. I can also tell you that Siena is getting healthy. They should have Tasman Goodrick back here, and Riley Mulvey, who was the 7-footer that they got from Iowa, a little gift from Fran McCaffrey. He's a local guy that went to play for Fran, and when Fran went to Penn, they kind of worked it out so he could come home and finish his career at Siena. He was the guy that got concussed in that Bonaventure game, and that's where Bonaventure crushed Siena, was at the rim. They really needed him in that game. He's going to travel. I don't know if he's going to play tonight or not, but the fact that he's making the trip is encouraging. And the other thing is, I mean, Vermont is probably not going to test you at the rim like a team like St. Bonaventure would. And, Casman Goodrick, he actually did come back for the Niagara and Canisius games, played limited minutes. But if he's back to his full sort of like 30 minutes a game, he's going to be one of the better players in the conference this year. So all of those things make me think that there's a positive outlook here for Siena, but this is still Vermont. It's still in Burlington, and that's still a very good Vermont team. So, Steve, I don't know. This is as a fan, I mean, I can't wait to watch this game. But man, I don't know if I want to go against Vermont on their home court. Small gym, should be a great atmosphere. The locals come out for that team. So even if the kids aren't there, it doesn't matter. I've been to Vermont games middle of December before, and it'll be all locals. So should be a good one tonight. Steve says Vermont 8-0 against Siena, maybe a pass. Yeah, they have owned Siena, but to Vermont's credit, they almost always have they're almost always favored. So this might be one of the better chances Siena's had to get a win over them in recent years. I wish I had more. I feel like anything else that comes out of my mouth right now, Rob, might be a little bit biased. So I'm going to go to you and see if you have an unbiased take in this Vermont Siena game.
I don't have an unbiased take, but at 10:42, I'm going to go ahead and get my parlay leg out of the way here, Adam. Unfortunately for us here, it does appear as if I'm having a little difficulty with the current odds screen. See if I can pull it up. But my choices were plenty today, of which game I really wanted to state the obvious and play South Florida, Alabama over the total to Alabama. And obviously, Nate Oates probably wants to put the assistant, Brian Hodgson, in his place. I could see it happening. There's been some movement towards South Florida. Second look was towards a Cincinnati team total for what it's worth against Alabama State. Shook that off and went with one of the highest ones on the board, but I can see Will Wade and company putting 100 on Texas Southern tonight. Texas Southern, again, we talked about Johnny Jones, and we talked a lot of SWAC teams that just play these ridiculously hard non-conference road schedules. Johnny Jones, to me, seems like he was the inventor of this. His team paying the price, obviously, in a big way, just getting slammed every time they take the floor against teams. Gave up 109 to Vanderbilt. Just recently gave up 89 to Nico Medved's Minnesota team, lose by 36 in that one. That came off the heels of a couple of home games and back to the road. Here for NC State, and you have to tread somewhat lightly and treat these as situational games. For NC State, there's a game with Mississippi on deck, which could be taken a lot more seriously than this one is going to be taken. However, NC State's also off of that overtime loss to Kansas, where Will Wade's not a guy to play 36 minutes and take the foot off the gas. Their team total here is 96.5. I need 97 to win this one. I'm pretty positive they're going to hang 100 on Texas Southern here, which is really defenseless to stop NC State in anything they want to do offensively. And what makes it worse is that teams' average possession length against Texas Southern, it's the second fastest tempo in the country. That's exactly what NC State wants to do, up score. I could consider isolating it, Adam, and trying to play a first half team total with NC State. I'm not going to argue anybody off of that. If you fear that NC State's going to let off the gas last 6-7 minutes of the game and put the reserves in and maybe not score as much, that's certainly a route to go. Those numbers aren't as readily available. Otherwise, I would probably use that. Like for myself, I would probably bet that. But for purposes of the show and numbers that are universally available, I'm going to play NC State team total over 96.5. We're going to need 97 to get there. But again, it looks like a game where Will Wade's team is going to get to 100. And maybe they get free pizza or donuts or hot dogs down there in Raleigh if the team gets to 100. I'm not sure.
Yeah, free cookout maybe. Yeah, I don't know.
Yeah.
That was sorry, I just want to make sure I got the number right. So you're going NC State team total. And what was the number you got it at again right
96.5.
Minus 110 on that?
I think it was even juiced to the under, Adam. The screen has just come back up for me. It was down for a second. So this number currently sits, this is an early game, NC State. It's in the added board, actually, because it's Texas Southern. Yeah, 96.5. The consensus number is minus 110. So we can roll with that. Yep.
All right. 96.5 NC State. Putting it on Texas Southern. I have nothing really to add. I wouldn't fade Will Wade in this kind of spot at home, just like, running it up on a team that he can run it up on, especially the way this season has gone, where, it feels like he could kind of use one of those at this point. Going back to that Siena game for a second, I mean, listen, Vermont their home court edge is not big enough for this to just steam into oblivion. Like, if Siena, I mean, I see Siena +3 some places. I don't think Vermont is better than Siena this year. I want to make that point very clear. I would say that these two teams are probably pretty equal right now. I think Vermont is the best team in the America East and what is going to be a down America East this year. So remember, go back to last year. Like, Vermont took a pretty big step back last season. And my gut tells me that they are the best of a worse group this year, and they maybe get a little love for that. So yeah, I mean, if that's going to keep steaming, I'll take a stand and say, like, I would punch back as soon as Siena 3 or better is probably a decent bet there, because those two teams are. I wouldn't say Vermont is better than Siena this year. I think they're pretty even. Both have redeeming qualities, and Goodrick back and being healthy is massive for Siena. So, but I'm not going to put that in the parlay. I'll find something else. We still have 12 minutes. I'm kind of mulling over like what I want to use for the parlay leg. I'm locking stuff in later by design right now. It's worked for me. So I don't have any client plays locked in just yet. That's why I don't have a client play to give you just yet. But we got 10 more minutes. I'll have one ready to go. Let's see. Let's go back to the chat. Actually, this is an intriguing game. I feel like we should hit another Big East contest. Xavier Creighton. A couple weeks ago, Rob, I would have said, "Oh, these two teams, they're both a disaster. Like, I want no part of either." But I've got to be honest. I'm kind of impressed with what Richard Pitino has done of late. I feel like he is from where Xavier was the first couple weeks of the season to what they've looked like the last couple times out. Like, just tip the cap to Richard Pitino. I feel like he's come a long way with this team already in a year where it's kind of known, like, that they don't have a ton of talent. Like, I feel like he's almost alluded to it being more of a rebuilding year. But I'm almost willing to say Xavier is a little bit of ahead of schedule at this point. All of a sudden, with with the way they've played the last month, and Creighton is, I don't know, man. The Creighton could be bad. Like, they could just be bad. They've looked awful. So Creighton Xavier, believe this is at Cintas Center. What do you make of this matchup?
Yeah, I think honestly that they haven't gotten beyond, and I'm speaking of Creighton here, they haven't gotten beyond the losses of Kalkbrenner and Ashworth, the two who carried the team last year, right? Point guard and center. It's like Coach McDermott just can't find solid replacements, or at least I shouldn't say solid, because those guys were, Kalkbrenner's in the NBA contributing. Ashworth was an excellent college point guard, ball handling and 3-point shooting, etc. They just haven't found those elements yet, where, as you said, we have talked about Xavier quite a bit on this show, and Richard Pitino has made headway with this team. The win over Cincinnati was big. The win over West Virginia was big. The close call with Georgia. I remember we had that team total for Georgia in the parlay that night. They had 52 at half or something crazy, and Xavier came out and played excellent D in the second half. So they've certainly made their way through. It's hard to back Creighton at this point in time. Again, I think that the head coach here is still trying to find the right pieces in the right place, the right rotations, etc. Where I think you said that maybe Pitino's a little ahead of schedule right here. I can go along with that. For Creighton, I just want to point out some numbers. What's generally a great shooting team, and it looks to me, Adam, that the Oregon game becomes more of a mirage than reality for Creighton. Again, it was a tournament game where you're playing a bunch of games in a very few days.
Oh,
And
those shouldn't even count.
Yeah.
Syracuse's loss to Iowa State shouldn't count. Yeah, that was ridiculous. Same thing for the Creighton Oregon game.
And so if you erase that from their ledger this year, you don't find much to stand on. And the point I really want to make is Creighton, generally you can count on them as an efficient offensive team, and it's just not the case this year. Just not efficient from anywhere. Xavier, 3.5-point favorite. It seems weird to see them in a favorite role in a Big East game this quickly, but the change has been rapid. So I could only look at Xavier in this game.
Yeah, I think that's probably the one thing that's maybe off-putting is like, okay, the pendulum has it swung too far? Now suddenly
Right.
Xavier's going to have to lay multiple possessions. Xavier kind of had, if you look at their season to this point, the Santa Clara game was the one that, like, if you're like a Xavier fan or supporter, you look at and you're just like, I can't believe we got run out of our own gym. I think the game was like a pick, maybe like -1, -2. Got absolutely destroyed by Santa Clara. The following game, they lost to Iowa, but that final score is deceiving. They played long stretches of that game that were like pretty impressive. Like Xavier looked much better, even though they ended up losing by 19 on the road to Iowa. Like, not a huge deal in my opinion. Iowa's very good. Since then, the only loss was the Georgia game, which might as well be a win, right? Like they were 10, I think they were a 10.5-point underdog. They end up losing a game by 1. Terrific game, neutral court, turn around and knock off West Virginia a couple days later. So it's like, got a win over Cincinnati, destroyed Missouri State last time out. There's no basketball reason here for me to like Creighton or to like Creighton. It would have to be Xavier. I'm just like wondering is this where like Creighton gives their like one effort and you just, kind of catch the bad spot? Because Xavier's played so well the last few games, but that Lemoyne game and that Marist game still happened this season, right? So it's almost like you have to like know that they could have one of those in them. I think that's ultimately why I won't lay multiple possessions, but we could be on this show 24 hours from now being like, man, Xavier that was easy, right? Like it feels like right now they are playing so much better that how could you pass them up on their home floor here? But as we know,
I'll just say, yeah, as we know, it could change in a minute. I just want to add one last thing here real quick, because we talked at the beginning of the season when they added the Iowa transfers, Josh Dix and Owen Freeman, to this Iowa team. Remember, Owen Freeman was hurt for Iowa last year. It cost them dearly because he was such an integral part of that team. He's done nothing for it. It's almost as if they don't know how to use him. I expected him to be some type of offensive force now that he's healthy, and it hasn't worked out. So again, Coach McDermott has some personnel things that they just haven't worked out yet.
Yeah, I mean, there's times I'll point back to they played a couple of Summit League teams earlier in the year, got totally I think it was at South Dakota, crushed them on the glass. Like that, those are just things that you would never expect the Creighton teams of the last few years to ever have those types of issues, right?
Right.
Just like and so yeah, you're talking about Kalkbrenner, generational talent for them. Will go down as one of the best players in the history of the program. Ashworth was fantastic since he showed up there. So yeah, this could be a transition type year. It is a transition type year because Alan Huss is going to be that coach, right? So it's like,
right,
is this the kind of wheels fall off type thing, and then McDermott kind of steps away, and then Huss gets to sort of build the team the way he wants to the next year. Who knows? But yeah, I couldn't take Creighton here. It would have to be Xavier or pass. All right, we've got about 5 minutes left. I guess I have to take a stand here, Rob, and lock this this parlay down. I'm gonna lay the 8.5 with UCLA. I have not played it for clients yet, but I really think that I'm just a believer in Cronin. I think he comes out and makes things seem so much worse than they are. This is still a team. Donovan Dent's still going to be a really good player. I know they're still figuring out how to use him. But I mean, there was times last year during his tenure at New Mexico where he straight up just took over a game. Like that's going to happen at some point. Donovan Dent didn't just get worse, right? Like he's not a worse. He didn't just magically become worse. He's just trying to figure out where he fits into what's much more of a system than playing for Richard Pitino at New Mexico was, where he just had basically free reign to pull up from 30, drive into the lane into three guys and just make a play. And he doesn't have that freedom at UCLA, but it doesn't mean that they're not going to figure that out. You talked about Bilodeau. He was dealing with injury at one point. He certainly seemed back against Gonzaga. I like the zone. I think it's going to, kind of present some challenges for Arizona State in this matchup. And I don't think Arizona State, even though they are a good three-point shooting team, is going to be a top 20 three-point shooting team this year. Like I looked at that roster. I don't know that they've got the shooters to stay in the top 25 nationally three-point shooting. I think some of that was those nice, soft, friendly rims in Maui. I don't know if the rims at Pauley Pavilion are quite as friendly. So this tick down, I didn't really agree with that move down to 8.5. So I'm going to lay it with UCLA. I was very impressed with them against Gonzaga, and I just think they're better. And I think their defense can put the clamps on Mo Odom. And if they can do that, Arizona State might have a hard time scoring, and you might see UCLA pull away. So we'll go UCLA minus 8.5 for the parlay.
Yeah, I will say I happened to catch that one game on the neutral where Mo Odom just went absolutely berserk. I forget who it was against, but he had,
it was
30 plus.
It was in Maui. Rob,
crazy.
I mean, I might be shooting 50% from three in Maui, the way some of those shots were going in. I lost one of the Maui Invitational games. I think Texas hits like 16 or 17 threes. Like what has Texas done since that tournament, right? Like I just every shot going in. See, Seton Hall couldn't miss a shot. I mean, that team, it's just so I wonder, you play 3 games there and you're playing 3 games against quality competition. Listen, like that might inflate your profile a little bit. And Arizona State played extremely well during their time at that tournament. So I just think Arizona State's a little bit inflated. And I still think UCLA is legit, even though they maybe haven't been to this point. And if you're going on the road and you run into a legit team like UCLA and they play the way that they're supposed to play, I feel like this could be a double-digit final. So, yeah, I'll lay it with the Bruins.
Real quick, just to give you the numbers fast before Mo Odom made 15 threes in that tournament. He's made 5 since.
Yeah, he's a really good player, but he's not JJ Redick. Like he's not just someone that's going to be bombs away from 30, 40, 3 and just eviscerate you from 3. So again, I just think that there's some of those numbers are a little skewed. And I actually think that this will likely move back to where it opened. Might even see it get to 10. So because right now on the show, we're locking this in, I can see, we'll call it 8.5. Ski Profit says, I haven't seen Trig hoop. I've seen Rob hoop. Ski, I'm a nightmare to play against. I'll go out and defend you in a pickup game like it's game 7. Probably not going to make many shots, but you want me on your pickup team, and everyone will be pissed at me. That's the kind of guy I am. I'm a soccer player playing basketball. So think of that. I played soccer, and I'm like, I don't have a ton of skill, but I'll just sit there and I'll be on you like glue in a pickup game, and you'll be like, get this guy out of here. Get him
out. You'll have 6 fouls in 5 minutes.
Yeah. Right. I played in like an adult league for a minute, and that was always an issue when they actually counted fouls. That was a problem. Yeah. But all right, guys, it's time. We'll be back tomorrow for more full court press. Just to recap the parlay, Rob is going to go NC State team total over 96.5. I'm going to go UCLA minus 8.5. Little 2-teamer. Hopefully another parlay win. We had one on Monday, and we'll be back in the morning for more full court press. Take care, everyone. We'll see you guys then.